This episode is brought to you by the Weather Channel app. Did you know the app can help you forecast more than just the weather? With allergy tracking and flu risk mapping. So you know when to stay inside and load up on podcast. As well as air quality and UV indexing. So you know when to get outside, load up on sunscreen, and podcast. Forecast more of what you love with the Weather Channel app.
Imagine that you could live to be 300 years old in good health, playing tennis, writing all the books you ever dreamed of writing, meeting your great-great-great-great-grandchildren. Science fiction, right? Actually, the science behind human longevity is real, and some people say it's just a matter of time before we all live this long.
This is not snake oil, this is science. And that's probably, again, one of the reasons we use the word immortality, because to differentiate it from simply living another 10 years or maybe, 100 years, which until recently seemed so outrageous. We're talking about living much longer than that.
That's National Geographic explorer Chip Walter, author of Immortality, Inc., Renegade Science, Silicon Valley Billions, and the Quest to Live Forever.
First of all, from an evolutionary standpoint, every creature has a kind of age limit, and that age limit is set by your genetics. And they're set because of the way you've evolved, the worlds in which you've evolved. In the case of humans, we can seem to be able to live a maximum of about 120 years. There are very few people that live that long, but there are no people that live longer than that, at least no one that we know of. So somewhere in there, in our genes, are certain switches that seem to exist that cause us to age.
With the help of Ancestry.com, a company that's collected millions of gene samples from people all over the world, researchers have studied the genes of people who've reached age 100 and beyond, hoping to discover the secret of their longevity.
Is there some magic gene? And the answer is no, there isn't. The truth is, the reason why people live unusually long is because they don't have more bad genes. It's not that you have a particularly good gene. But everyone has bad genes. It's just people that get a wrong hand and they get some bad genes, they die earlier. And if they are lucky enough to have very few bad genes, then they will live unusually long.
Researchers believe that by identifying these bad genes, individuals can be proactive and take steps to prevent disease from developing in the future.
Let's say that you have a predilection for diabetes. When diabetes starts to create all sorts of problems, down the road, all of your organs begin to suffer, your quality of health begins to suffer. Some of this could be genetic, some of it could be lifestyle, but at least if you know ahead of time that genetically you may be predisposed at a certain age to begin to have problems, then you could get on top of those problems ahead of time and you would have to deal with them.
After learning all of this, Walter was curious about what his own health might be 10 years down the road. So he had his complete genome mapped, got a brain MRI, and gave numerous vials of blood to researchers.
Luckily, I didn't find that I had incipient Alzheimer's. It didn't discover any amyloids in my brain or any kind of genetics that there's a very, very rare gene that I suppose my two daughters, if they married another man and had a child that had the exact same gene, recessive gene, they could have a child that would have a severe disease, but mostly we got pretty lucky.
Thousands of people have gotten these same tests, and most of them have found no diseases lurking in their genes. However,
30% of those people found problems that were life-threatening that they did not know they had. And most of these people go through this thinking that they're healthy. So on the one hand, bad news, but better than not finding out at all. One of the examples in the book is a woman that 27 years old that had an aneurysm. She could have blown it out at any time and she would have died, but they found it and they fixed it. And now she's healthy.
But what about cost? All this testing isn't covered by insurance, at least not yet. Does that mean only the wealthy get to live long, healthy lives?
Anything that's on the cutting edge like this is usually more expensive because you don't have very many people that are going to pay for it. Right now, you have to have people that have a certain amount of money who are willing to go in and basically subsidize, this sort of thing. I don't think it necessarily means that only the wealthy will be able to use these sorts of procedures and services. I just think that they're the first early adopters. I think what will happen is that as some of these sort of concierge approaches become more effective and you begin to see some real results, then the insurance industry is going to look at that and say, if we are actually helping people before they get sick, we'll save money. So since that seems to be the motivation to save money, it just turns out that in that case, we'll probably also save lives.
However, going after all the bad genes we have may not be the only way to radically extend our lives. Back in the early 1990s, molecular biologist Cynthia Kenyon made an important discovery. By modifying just 2 genes in a lowly roundworm called C. elegans, its lifespan was doubled and in robust health. Since then, researchers have looked for a way to similarly flip a switch, so to speak, and create the same effect in humans. This research is even financially backed by Big Pharma's AbbVie and Google Ventures to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars.
One of the big questions that people always ask whenever we discuss this idea and this book is, well, what is going to happen if everyone lives this long? Are we going to just burn the planet down? Are there going to be too many people? Will we be too crowded? Whenever people begin living hundreds of years, and this isn't going to happen just the flip of a switch, but whenever we live that long, it's going to capsize everything. It's going to capsize economics, society, personal relationships, religion. So I think that we have to be aware that this is coming and try to get on top of it before it gets on top of us.
You can get on top of the questions and the possibilities in Chip Walter's book, Immortality, Inc., available now. You can find more information about all of our guests on our website, radiohealthjournal.org. This segment originally aired in March of 2020 and was written and produced by Polly Hansen. Our lead producer is Kristen Farah. Our production manager is Jason Dickey. I'm Greg Johnson.
Coming up next week on Radio Health Journal.
Most people are unaware that they have some degree of risk. A stroke can happen to anyone of any age at any time.
How to protect yourself from a sudden stroke.
Then, cigarettes aren't the only danger to your lung health.
I always tell all my patients, no smoke is good smoke, right? So even vaping can have long-term deleterious effects in your airways and your lung tissue.
All that and more on Radio Health Journal. I'm Elizabeth Westfield, host of Radio Health Journal. If you enjoy listening to Radio Health Journal, you'll also like our sister show, Viewpoints, which covers a wide array of topics from education to history to the environment. Here's a preview of what they're covering this week on Viewpoints.
I told my doctor I felt fine, and in that same visit, that same 10 minutes, he found a baseball-sized cyst on my left ovary.
7-time Olympic medalist Shannon Miller shares her cancer story and what she learned along the way. Then,
the most popular and bipartisan issue in the country, 87% of Americans favor it. A very small number are opposed.
What's the issue uniting both Republicans and Democrats? I'm Marty Peterson.
And I'm Gary Price. These stories in depth this week on your public affairs magazine, Viewpoints.
Listen to Viewpoints on your favorite radio station, iTunes, and Stitcher.
And that's Radio Health Journal for this week. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram to learn more. And check Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify for a library of past programs. Plus, you'll always find previous segments and information about our guests at radiohealthjournal.org. Join us again next week for another edition of Radio Health Journal.
When you save on auto insurance for driving safe with USAA Safe Pilot, you'll feel like a big deal, even in a traffic jam. Save up to 30% with USAA Safe Pilot. Restrictions apply.